we heard a little bit about this coming out in December from Ken Rosenthal. Salvador Perez is close with White Sox manager Pedro Grifol, his former catching instructor and bench coach with the Royals. So close, it stands to reason that the White Sox might at least think about trading or asking for Perez in a trade. And then, weirdly enough, at the trade deadline, Joel Sherman said Royals entertained offers for Sal Perez. Not completely dead, but very unlikely he is moved. Marlins had interest, so did non-contending White Sox, owing to relationship with manager Pedro Grifol and team control through 2025 with a 2026 team option. And then Bob Nightingale also said the Chicago White Sox and Kansas City Royals were engaged in serious trade discussions for Royals all-star catcher Sal Perez on trade deadline day before the White Sox simply weren't willing to give up the prospects the Royals sought. We've heard about this from Rick Hahn before, that you're always trying to get the price of a player, and then in the offseason when maybe it comes down or maybe they've come off a little bit, that's when you strike. So we see the talk about culture here. We obviously see Pedro Grifol installed, and one of the first things that he wanted, or at least the White Sox wanted, was to bring in Andrew Benintendi, someone who Pedro Grifol was familiar with. Do we expect the White Sox to go knocking on the Royals' door again to see about Sal Perez? Because Yasmani Grandal's contract's coming up. Sebi Zavala is kind of just a quad A catcher. Same with Sal Perez, or same with Carlos Perez. Mm-hmm. There is Corey Lee and Edgar Caro in the system, but what do we make of Sal Perez, future White Sox catcher?
I mean, I think you could do worse, but also this is a White Sox thing. Like Kenny Williams, the whole thing is like he'll always get this guy. This is Rick Hahn always getting this guy. I mean, we saw in 2020 tried to do this with Lance Lynn later on that year, and the offseason he got Lance Lynn eventually after that. We know he's been chasing or wanted Andrew Benintendi for a long time, for 7 years. Finally got him in this offseason. And so, if Pedro wants to establish culture and they've already shown interest in Salvador Perez, to me it seems like fait accompli. They're going to have Salvador Perez this offseason for multiple reasons. Because Corey Lee, I don't know how ready he is, but going into next season, if you're going to be competing, it's going to be tough to have a guy you're depending on that you don't know what he's going to do. And then you look at the free agent market for catchers. No, sir. Terrible. The only thing that would be holding the White Sox back from getting Salvador Perez, besides, giving up prospects, is his $20 million price tag that goes along with him for this year and $22 million that goes along with him for the year after that. But otherwise, he's a guy that is a no-nonsense guy, usually hits for power and hits above average. This year he's below average in both power in both hitting and fielding. So I don't know if you have a market improvement at the catcher position, you'll have more home runs, but I don't know if it's going to be leading you from, the under 23 games they're at now to somewhere close to 500 or above. But hey, as I always say, it can't hurt. It might help. A veteran like that is well respected. I think he's been to 8 or 9 All-Star games. He's fine, but I would look for others to supplement the roster instead of Salvador Perez, because getting the whole Royals team over here, I'm good. They're that's the only team in the division that's worse than us, and we're just picking all the damn players and coaches.
I mean, it would seem to me, just from the sheer notion of this, it would seem to me that there are a lot of positives to bringing him over here. The relationship with the manager, a guy who he can put in that clubhouse, a guy who is a Latino, like some of the other important players on this team are, to install that sort of role model who can very clearly communicate exactly what his manager wants his teammates to do. That would seem to be a huge positive. But this is the kind of thing you describe from someone you bring in as a backup catcher on a very inexpensive deal. This is somebody that you would describe as, acquiring Elvis Andrus in the middle of last season and saying, he'll be a good influence on some of these guys because you acquired him for nothing or just a small amount of money, right? This is not something that you give up, player capital to get and then pay $40 million to over the course of 2 seasons. if he's not going to be producing at an all-star level again. So if you're telling me that he's going to be an all-star catcher again, well, then, yeah, that's a huge upgrade for the White Sox. But if you're saying they're going to bring him in to be a bridge guy while Lee and Caro develop in the minors, that's pretty expensive. And a pretty, you would be giving up a lot to acquire that type of player. So I think there are a lot of positives to having him as part of this organization, and a lot of them are behind those clubhouse doors as opposed to out here on the field. But I mean, this is a team where we're trying to wait and see if they're going to spend big money on top name players. And while, listen, Salvador Perez has long been one of the best catchers in baseball offensively and is probably one of the 5 best players in the history of the franchise that he currently plays for. He is aging, and aging catchers, you, like I said, you usually bring them in as backups on cheap deals to give a division rival prospects, and then to commit that much money to him when you have a lot of other areas that you need to address with said money. It doesn't seem to line up too perfect. But I'll just say, Herb, you said this would be an example of the White Sox getting their guy again. Well, it would seem to be an example of Pedro Grifol getting his guy, right? Getting one of the players he's had the closest relationship with. And to be fair, Pedro is the guy that's tasked with turning this ship around in the right direction inside the clubhouse and on the field. So if he thinks that there's something that we're not seeing that is worth that cost, we'll see. But yeah, it would seem to me that the cost would be pretty high.
Giving up prospects, you'd likely have to take on the contract too, or a large majority of it. And you have Yasmani Grandal, who was one of the largest free agent signings before coming, or when he was signed back in 2020. Perez is going to be making more than him next year. He was signed to $482. That would be one of the largest contracts that they ever paid from a year-to-year basis. Mm-hmm. Very surprising for them to pick that up from a division rival, giving them prospects, giving them salary relief. It just seems messy. And again, he also might be bad. He's 33 and has been catching. Catchers, just like running backs, usually don't get better with age. They're the opposite of wine. So, yeah, I would say let's pass on that.